What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about how you can utilize progression history in order to scout your opponents within franchise mode. Now, I know that this is a utility that you're probably not all going to utilize. This is going to be if you want to take your game planning to the extreme within franchise mode and get the jump on your opponent to know what they've been doing with their team, and so that you can see potentially what other teams around the league are doing as well. So in today's video, what we're going to do is we're going to hop into the roster of an opposing team. So our matchup this week is against the Buffalo Bills. We're the Jacksonville Jaguars, and what I want to get into is the player progression history and how to get to that. So we're going to go to that team. We're going to select one of the top players on that team, for example. It doesn't matter which player it is. It can be any player on that team. And whenever you click into that player, you're going to be able to hit the right bumper a couple of times to go over to their progression history tab. So this is where all of the action is going to happen. Now, you may notice right off the bat what is available information-wise for you to see here on the screen. So we can see that last week, this Buffalo Bills team had the defend deep pass offensive focus. Now, we're going to get into a detail here real quick that's very important for you to know whenever we talk about the focus that we're seeing here on offense and defense for these teams within franchise mode. But we can very clearly see what the opposing team is training each week. Now, the one thing that is odd that you should pay attention to, that we're going to dive a little bit further into here, is on an offensive player like Stephon Diggs, it is saying defend deep pass offense focus. Whereas if we go to a top defensive player and we take a look at their progression history, then it shows throw it deep defensive focus. So both are showing a confusing wording on what you're actually training, or what that team is actually training. So what I want you guys to be aware of is that for offensive players, it will show the defensive focus training, and for defensive players, it will actually show the offense's focus training. It's very odd. So in order to break that down further for you, just so that you are aware, whenever you focus on offense to throw it deep, it will then show up on the progression history of all of your defensive players. So right here, it says throw it deep focus. This is what the offense for this team focused for that given week. And likewise, when I go to the offensive player and look at the progression history, their defense focus trained deep pass focus. So we have to keep that in mind whenever we are taking a look at what these teams actually trained. So I very quickly hopped over to another one of my franchises here, just a quickly generated one, so I can give you guys a direct example of what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go to my weekly training in preseason week 1 here, and I'm going to select contain quarterback scramble, for example, here for defensive focus, and for offensive focus, we're going to go ahead and select throw it medium. So whenever I go through and I finish out this training, we'll then see where this actually shows up for these players. So remember, our offensive focus was throw it medium. Our defensive focus was to contain QB scramble. So in theory, in reality, you should be able to look at your offensive player and see throw it medium, and look at your defensive player and see contain QB scramble. But in practicality, that's not what actually happens. So we can actually go to Laramie Tunsil here, our top offensive player, and it shows contain quarterback scramble. The weird thing here is that it says contain quarterback scramble offensive focus, but as I just showed you, that was our defensive focus for the week. So this is an issue that has been going on since the entire training system has come out for Madden 22, and they have yet to fix it. I don't know if EA devs are even aware that that is an issue, but then we can go to our top defensive player and it's going to show throw it medium, which is a little bit bizarre, but nonetheless, you need to know that so that when we actually go to scout players within franchise mode, or scout what another team is potentially doing, then we have the correct information. So let's then go ahead and apply this to this situation. Let's say that I want to game plan against the Buffalo Bills, and I want to know what they're doing as a team. So first, I want to know what they're doing as an offense. I'm going to go to progression history on a defensive player because, again, it is flip-flopped. It's weird, but that's what we got to get used to, and I can take a look at their trends of what they focus train. So I can see right off the bat here that they did throw it deep focus for last week, throw it deep focus for week 12, throw it deep for week 11, and so on. So it seems like that they are doing a game plan for most of the weeks that they are game planning here. Occasionally they're coming out and doing a blitz counter defense or something slightly different, but for the past 3 weeks they've been doing throw it deep defensive focus, or offensive focus I should say, because we're on a defensive player. Again, it gets confusing. But nonetheless, I can identify a trend here. This team likes to focus, train, throw it deep. So what we can then do is we can go look at weekly training and see what pluses and minuses that gives their team, and ultimately we can come to a decision of what we want to do in order to target that or in order to defend that. We may know that they are genuinely trying to throw the ball deep. Maybe their team on the stats page has a lot of passing yards, tries to throw the ball a lot and air it out, and therefore we want to try to be prepared to defend the deep pass and things of that nature. Likewise, we can do the same thing for the defensive side of the ball. So if we click on an offensive player, again, just saying that it is flip-flopped so you guys know, we can then go ahead and take a look at what their defensive training is and what they are susceptible to or what they're potentially trying to stop. So they did defend deep pass, defend inside run, and then we can match that up with what they're doing defensively and what teams they're going up against. Again, another defend deep pass focus here for their defense in week 10 as well. So we can then take that a step further, go look at weekly training and see what pluses and minuses it gives us for defending deep pass. And then we can use that information to say, hey, this person is trying to get these bonuses and this is what they're trying to negate from happening. They're trying to defend anything over the top. So let's go ahead and attack this defense in a different way. That is a very handy bit of information for you to know, because knowing what the opponent is trying to do or trying to establish, especially if they have a trend against certain teams or a trend as a whole as a team because they're trying to do something specific, then that can help you game plan as a team. Now, you can take this even one step further and you can always wait until your opponent weekly game plans. You can see for what their progression history is once they've trained for that week, and then you can go and do your game planning against that. Now, I don't recommend that because that is shady. That's pretty cheesy, to be honest with you. I don't do that. There's people that have done that against me. I don't trust that. I think it's shady. I don't think you guys should be waiting to the last minute to do your weekly training because of somebody else, trying to get the jump on them or see what they're doing and countering what they're doing. That's not what I'm saying in this video at all. You guys can see here that I've already completed my weekly training for this week. The Buffalo Bills have not. I never go in and look at their training for that week to counter it. You know what I mean? The first thing I do when I advance from one week to another is I do my training because I want to get my player upgrades out of the way. I want to set what I'm trying to do for the week. However, all I'm trying to say is that you can look at the progression history for a team to see if there's a trend or to see if there's some bit of information to help you understand, okay, this team's tendency is to do this. This team's tendency is to try to defend this or try to attack this part of the field. And it's much like what the information is that you get when you do your weekly training anyway. It is just more so looking at some of the real data of what that team is trying to get bonuses for or trying to defend. So again, I don't recommend you guys go out there and do anything crazy and just constantly wait for your opponents to weekly game plan first. I think that's shady. I think that's cheesy. I definitely don't recommend doing that, but I definitely think that if you have, for example, an opponent that you're going up against that you know is pretty solid, that maybe you have some trouble with, then go back and look at their old progression history and just see, maybe I know that in a week or two I'm going up against one of my best opponents. I'm going up against a divisional matchup. We're tied for our division. Like, let's say the Titans, for example, here in my division. That's another user. That's a rival that I have. And the game that we have is going to be dependent on who actually wins the division. So right now, even though I don't play them until week 16 or week 17, I'm going to go ahead and potentially look at their progression history and just see if there aren't some trends that that team is trying to do that maybe is giving them an advantage or giving them, a target area of the field or something that they're trying to prevent happening to them on defense or something like that. Just a little bit bit of information, nothing that in my opinion is going to be considered cheating or cheesy. However, you can take it to that next step, and I don't recommend that. You can potentially get in trouble for that within leagues, so like I said, I don't recommend taking it to that next step. However, I did want you guys to know that this information is there and available on the player progression history tab, and I did also want you guys to know that it is flipped. You're going to see your offensive stuff on defensive players, and you're going to see defensive stuff on offensive players. So you definitely want to keep that in mind if you are going to take the time to scout out an opponent like this. You definitely want to know what you're actually looking at, because it can be quite confusing. If I took a look at Josh Allen here, for example, as a defensive player, and it says run outside defense focus, I might think that this team is training run outside on defense, when in actuality that was run outside for the offense. We definitely want to keep that in mind and keep that straight. It can get confusing, but I want you guys to have all of that information so you guys can make the right decisions within your franchise modes. So hopefully this information was useful to you in some way. If it was, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. I'll see you guys in the next one, and I hope you have a good one.